When you stop chasing, you stop bleeding. That's the truth most people never want to hear, my friends, because the world has conditioned you to believe that chasing is strength, that persistence is proof of love, and that the more you give, the more you'll be valued. But let me tell you right now, it's the opposite. The more you run after someone who keeps pulling away, the smaller you look in their eyes. And the second you stop, the second you plant your feet and refuse to crawl back, the entire story begins to change. If you've ever wondered what they think when you don't chase them, today you're going to find out. But before we dive deep, hit that like button, subscribe, and make sure you stay with me until the end, because what I'm about to share can save you years of heartbreak and wasted energy. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in a field chasing a butterfly. You run faster and faster, trying to grab it, but the more you reach, the more it slips away. Then one day, you stop. You sit down in the grass, calm, unbothered, breathing steady, and suddenly that butterfly doesn't know what to do anymore. It flutters in circles, confused, because it wasn't your chase that made it feel valuable. It was your stillness that forced it to question its own flight. That's exactly what happens when you don't chase. They expect you to run, to beg, to break your own dignity just to stay in their orbit. And when you don't, something shifts. They don't feel power anymore. They feel doubt. They don't feel like the prize anymore. They feel replaceable. And this is where the lies start to break, my friends. Society has taught you, if you love her, chase her. If she pulls away, prove yourself. If she's distant, give her more. But what has that given you? Anxiety, sleepless nights, a twisted knot in your stomach every time the phone stays silent. Chasing isn't strength, it's slavery with a smile. And the moment you stop running is the moment you finally understand your own value. Because here's the brutal truth. They don't respect what's always available. They don't cherish what they never had to earn. Your constant effort doesn't make them think more of you. It makes them think less. My friends, when you don't chase, you become the question mark they can't answer. They start wondering, why isn't he calling me? Why didn't he double text? Did I misjudge him? Was he stronger than I thought? Your silence turns into a storm in their mind, louder than 1,000 messages. And here's the beauty, they can't control it, because for the first time, you didn't give them the reaction they were expecting. You gave them absence. And absence, when delivered with dignity, is the most powerful presence in the world. I know it's hard. I know your heart tells you to reach out, to explain, to fix things. But listen to me. Every time you chase, you're teaching them that your worth depends on their approval. You're handing them the script and letting them write the ending. But when you stop, when you reclaim the pen, that's when you become unforgettable. That's when you stop being an option and start being a standard. Folks, I've seen it again and again. The moment a man stops chasing is the moment he begins to grow, not just in their eyes, but in his own. So here's what I want you to do right now. Drop a comment saying, I will not chase. Write it like you mean it. Write it like you're burning the old script of desperation, and write it like you're stepping into your new self. Because this isn't just about them. It's about you. About your peace, about your power, about your presence. And if you're ready to live that truth, if you're ready to stop running and start standing tall, then you're in the right place. Press that like button, subscribe, and stay with me, because what's coming next will not only open your eyes, it will change the way you carry yourself forever. Remember this, my brothers, stop chasing, start choosing. That's your affirmation today. Write it down, type it out, and speak it into your life. Stop chasing, start choosing. Number 1, they assume you'll always chase. The more you run towards someone, the faster they learn to run away. My friends, this is the lie the world never warned you about. From the beginning, most of them are conditioned to believe you'll always be the pursuer. They've been told that your desire is your weakness, that your effort is a guarantee, and that no matter how they act, whether they pull back, go silent, or test you with games, you'll keep showing up. They walk into the story with the script already written. You're the one chasing, they're the ones being chased. And if you dare to flip that script, if you dare to stand still instead of running, they're left with questions that shake their entire sense of control. Think of it like this. Imagine a stage where a spotlight shines only on them. You, the man in the shadows, are expected to keep clapping, keep cheering, keep feeding the applause that convinces them they're worth watching. That's the unspoken contract. They give breadcrumbs of attention, and in return, you provide the validation that keeps the show alive. But what happens when you stop clapping? What happens when you get up, leave the theater, and refuse to be the audience anymore? Suddenly the stage feels empty, the spotlight burns hotter, and the silence becomes unbearable. Because it was never about love, it was about control. They assume you'll always chase because that's what most do. Most men panic at the first sign of distance. Most men can't handle the dry text, the delayed reply, the cold shoulder. They break, they beg, they over-explain. They teach them that indifference is power and desperation is weakness. And so they grow confident, not in themselves, but in their ability to pull you back any time they want. They think, he'll come back, he'll call, he'll try again. They always do. And here's where the lie destroys men, because chasing feels like action, but it's really surrender. You think you're fighting for the connection, but you're really fighting for approval, and approval that comes through begging is never real respect. Ask yourself this: why do they expect you to chase? Why do they assume you'll be the one holding on when they let go? It's not because they know you deeply. It's because the world taught them that your desire cancels out your dignity. Movies show it. Friends reinforce it. Social media applauds it. The man who sends the flowers after rejection, the man who shows up uninvited just to prove his love, the man who waits by the phone even after being ignored. That's the romantic hero we've been brainwashed to admire. But in reality, that's not romance. That's erasing yourself for someone else's comfort. That's giving away power that was yours to keep. And here's the hard part, folks. It's not easy to stop chasing because deep down you've been taught to fear silence. That if you don't respond, you'll lose them forever. That if you don't explain yourself, they'll assume you don't care. That if you don't fight for them, they'll find someone who will. Fear tells you that standing still means losing, but that's another lie. The truth is, when you stop chasing, you find out if they were ever walking toward you in the first place. If they're not willing to meet you halfway, was it ever real? Or was it just your legs doing all the running while they sat back enjoying the chase? Imagine the ocean, my friends. You're swimming hard toward a boat that keeps drifting further and further away. Every stroke takes more of your strength, and every time you look up, the boat hasn't moved. It's waiting for you to exhaust yourself. That's what chasing feels like. But the moment you stop swimming, something powerful happens. The boat is no longer in control. You are. And they have to decide. Do they come toward you, or do they let the distance grow until the connection is lost? Most of them never expect you to stop swimming. And when you do, the shock of it rattles everything they thought they knew. They assume you'll always chase because it reassures their ego. Your pursuit tells them they're desirable, even when they put in no effort. Your messages confirm their worth, even when they ignore yours. Your consistency proves their power, even when they disrespect you. And when you withdraw, when you finally say without words, "I will not be the runner anymore," that ego starts to starve. They don't just lose your presence. They lose the mirror that was reflecting back an inflated image of themselves. And for someone who depends on being chased to feel valuable, nothing is more terrifying than realizing the chase is over. Now let me tell you why it's so difficult to resist the urge to chase. Because silence doesn't give you quick results. It doesn't bring instant clarity. In the short term, silence feels like loss, while chasing feels like effort. You feel powerless watching the phone stay dark, watching the days pass without their voice, watching them carry on as if nothing happened. And every part of you screams, "Do something, prove yourself, fix it." That's the trap. That's the illusion. Chasing gives you the illusion of control, but it's really submission. Silence feels like surrender, but it's actually power. And here's the twist they never expect. When you stop chasing, you don't just change the dynamic, you change yourself. You discover strength you didn't know you had. You learn to sit with discomfort instead of running from it. You realize that you were never losing them, you were losing yourself in the chase. And when you stop, when you reclaim your ground, they feel it. The energy shifts, the power shifts. And suddenly, you're no longer the man begging for attention. You're the man who gave attention and then chose to take it back. And that kind of man? He's not easy to forget. So, my friends, write this down in the comments right now. I do not chase. Let it be your reminder, your declaration, your stand against the lie that chasing makes you strong. Show them, show yourself, and show the world around you that you are no longer running after anyone who doesn't run toward you. Because the truth is, chasing never made you valuable. It only made you tired. Standing still, grounded, calm and certain, that's what makes you powerful. Stay with me, because we're just getting started. What happens when you stop chasing isn't just about them. It's about the storm of reflection your silence creates in their mind. And that storm, folks, is only beginning. Number 2. Your absence forces self-reflection. Silence is not empty, it is full of answers. Folks, let's tell the truth most men avoid. The reason they expect you to chase isn't just about ego, it's about comfort. Your presence, your energy, your constant check-ins acted like a cushion. It gave them security, it gave them certainty, and it gave them the luxury to test, to delay, to pull back, knowing you'd always be there. But the moment you stop, the moment you step away without announcement, without drama, without explanation, something happens inside them they never prepared for. They're forced to look in the mirror, and for the first time, they don't like what they see. Think about it. When you were always reaching out, always calling, always making sure the connection stayed alive, they never had to face themselves. They never had to ask, am I giving enough? Do I deserve this consistency? Am I worthy of this man's effort? Because your effort covered their absence. Your presence hid their lack. But when you vanish, when the texts stop coming, when the attention that felt guaranteed suddenly goes silent, all the noise in their life fades, and what's left is the echo of their own actions. And that echo is loud. Imagine a room that used to be filled with music. Your voice, your laughter, your energy. It was like a song playing in the background of their life. And when that song is suddenly cut off, the silence isn't peaceful, it's deafening. They start to feel the weight of every moment they dismissed you. Every unanswered text becomes a memory they can't erase. Every time they pulled back becomes a regret they can't shake. Because now the silence plays back the truth they never wanted to face. They weren't the only ones in control. This is why your absence is so powerful. It turns the spotlight back on them. They begin to reflect, not because you said anything, but because you stopped saying everything. They wonder, did I misjudge him? Was he stronger than I thought? Did I mistake his kindness for weakness? Did I waste someone rare? These questions don't disappear overnight. They linger. They circle back in quiet moments, in late-night thoughts, in sudden flashes of memory when they scroll through old conversations. And the irony is, the more they try to ignore it, the louder it becomes. Here's where the fear creeps in for them, because self-reflection isn't easy. Most people avoid it their entire lives. They bury themselves in distractions, in attention from others, in noise that keeps them from looking inward. But your absence removes the noise. It leaves them alone with themselves, and when someone's entire sense of worth has been built on external validation, being left alone with their own thoughts is terrifying. They start to notice the cracks they never had to see before. They realize that the stability they laughed off was the very thing holding their chaos together. But let's be real, my friends. This isn't easy for you either, because silence feels like a gamble. It feels like you're risking everything, like if you stop reaching out, you'll lose them forever, and maybe you will. But here's the truth. If silence makes them walk away completely, it proves something you needed to know. It proves they were never there for you. They were there for the attention you gave them. Your absence didn't lose them. It revealed them. And that's the kind of clarity men avoid because it hurts. But that pain, that's the exact pain that frees you. Your absence forces them to replay the truth. They begin to recall the details they overlooked, the loyalty they doubted, the patience they mocked, the consistency they thought was ordinary. And now, in silence, those details feel rare. They start to compare, not because they want to, but because they can't help it. Every new person they meet feels shallow in comparison. Every compliment from someone else feels hollow. Because what you gave wasn't just attention, it was presence. And once presence is gone, every imitation feels empty. Think about the sun, folks. When it's shining every day, people take it for granted. They complain about the heat, they hide in the shade, they act like it will always be there. But when the sun sets, when night falls, when the cold creeps in, that's when people realize how much they depended on its warmth. You were the sun in their world, constant, steady, reliable. And when you walked away, they were forced to feel the cold. And that cold makes them reflect, not on the sun itself, but on how careless they were while it was still shining. So here's the lie broken. They didn't lose interest because you weren't valuable. They lost interest because they thought your value was permanent. And when you stepped away, they finally realized it wasn't. That reflection cuts deeper than any argument, deeper than any speech. Because it doesn't come from your words, it comes from their own mind. And when people begin to question themselves, that doubt doesn't leave. It lingers, it reshapes them, and it makes your absence unforgettable. So write this in the comments right now. My silence has power. Let it be your declaration, your reminder that stepping back isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Show them. Show yourself, show the world that you don't need to chase to prove your worth. You only need to stand still and let the silence speak. Because in that silence the truth comes out, and it forces them to reflect on everything they thought they knew. And that reflection, my friends, is only the beginning of the storm. Number 3. The ego begins to starve. Ego is a fire. It only burns if you keep feeding it. My friends, let's strip this down to the bone. When you were chasing, when you were pouring out attention, affection, and effort, you weren't just giving love, you were feeding their ego. Every text you sent, every compliment you gave, every check-in when they went cold, all of it was fuel. And the ego, by its nature, is never satisfied. It devours every ounce of energy and still whispers, more, give me more. But when you step back, when you cut off the supply line, that fire doesn't rage higher, it begins to die. Slowly, painfully, it flickers. And for someone who was used to the flame being constant, nothing feels more threatening than the cold that follows. Picture this, a plant that's been watered every single day. The soil is rich, the leaves look green, and from the outside it seems healthy. But the truth is that plant never developed deep roots because it never had to. Your water, your consistency kept it alive. Then suddenly, The water stops. At first, the plant looks the same. It stands tall, almost as if nothing changed. But beneath the surface, the soil starts to dry. The roots feel the hunger. The leaves grow brittle. The life that once seemed permanent begins to fade. That's the ego starving when your attention is gone. And here's the brutal reality. It wasn't about you. It was about what you gave them. You thought they wanted you, but more often than not, they wanted the way you made them feel. Your admiration was like a mirror, reflecting back an image of worthiness they couldn't find on their own. Without it, they start questioning themselves in ways they never dared before. Was I really as special as I thought? Did he see something in me that no one else does? If he stops chasing, does that mean I was never the prize? That spiral is the ego unraveling, and it's not pretty. They laughed at your compliments, rolled their eyes at your consistency, acted indifferent to your loyalty. But don't be fooled. They absorbed every ounce of it, not as gratitude, but as entitlement. They believed they were owed your devotion. They thought your love was endless, bottomless, unconditional to the point of self-erasure. And when you stopped, when you finally decided to choose peace over proving yourself, their entitlement crashed into reality, and reality tastes bitter when you've been drunk on attention. Folks, this is where fear creeps in, not your fear, theirs. Because now they can't hide behind your validation. They can't look in the mirror and say, I must be incredible, he's still here. Instead, the mirror shows them cracks. It shows them the times they gave nothing and still received everything. It shows them the patience they abused, the loyalty they mocked, the presence they dismissed. And that recognition isn't gentle. It doesn't whisper, it shouts in silence, because when the ego loses its food source, it doesn't grow quieter, it grows desperate. So what do? They distract themselves. They post louder on social media, hoping you'll notice. They respond to people in their DMS who they wouldn't have given a second glance weeks ago. They go out more, laugh louder, pretend harder. But here's the truth. Attention that isn't yours feels hollow. Validation that isn't earned feels fake, because no one else reflects them the way you did. No one else gave without asking, cared without conditions, or stayed steady when things were uncertain. And deep down, they know it. Here's the lie broken. They never had the power. They only had the supply. You were the one giving the consistency. You were the one creating the story. They were just living off it. And when you cut that off, you didn't just starve the ego. You revealed the emptiness behind it. That's why they panic. That's why they start to reach back in subtle ways, liking an old photo, dropping a casual text, asking how you've been, pretending it's nothing. It's not about love. It's about ego hunger. It's about wanting the mirror back. But my friends, this is where you must stand tall, because the hardest part is recognizing that not every return is genuine. Sometimes it's just ego clawing for another taste of what you used to give freely. If you cave, if you chase again, the fire roars back and you're stuck in the cycle. But if you hold steady, if you refuse to feed what was starving you, that's when real transformation happens, not just for them, but for you. Remember this, your absence is not cruelty, it's clarity. You didn't leave to punish them, you left to protect yourself. And in doing so, you showed them something no one else had the courage to. You showed them the truth, that their ego was never love, that their control was never real, and that their power ended the moment you chose peace over pursuit. So right now, type it in the comments. I will not feed egos. Let the world see it, let yourself believe it, and let them feel the weight of it. Because a man who no longer feeds empty fires is a man who builds his own light. And that, my friends, is the kind of strength no one can take away. Stay with me, because the next truth cuts even deeper. What grows in your absence isn't just reflection or hunger, it's respect. And that shift will change everything. Number 4, respect rises in distance. Respect is born in silence, not in noise. My friends, here's a hard truth most men never grasp until it's too late. The things you thought would earn respect, constant presence, constant effort, constant reassurance, those were never the things that built respect. They were the things that drained it. Because when you were always there, always answering, always giving, your presence became expected, not valued. They didn't look at you as rare, they looked at you as reliable, and reliability without boundaries doesn't inspire respect, it inspires entitlement. But the moment you pulled back, the moment you walked away with calm and dignity, that's when the shift began. That's when they started to see you differently. Think of it like art in a gallery. If a masterpiece hung in your living room every day, after a while, you'd walk past it without even noticing. You'd grab your coffee, glance at your phone, and the beauty on the wall would blur into the background. But place that same painting in a gallery, rope it off, surround it with silence, and suddenly people line up just to admire it. The art never changed, the distance did. That's how your respect grows when you step back. They finally see what was in front of them all along, not because you became more, but because you refused to keep being less. At first they'll tell themselves you overreacted, that you were too sensitive, that you should have tried harder, waited longer, explained yourself one more time. But as the days pass, the narrative begins to crack. Because now there's no one left to prove wrong. You're not watching their stories, you're not checking in with mutual friends, you're not circling back to just see how they're doing. And the more they try to paint you as the problem, the more their own reflection pushes back. Deep down, they know the truth. You gave them chances, you gave them loyalty, you gave them effort even when it wasn't matched. And still, you didn't leave in chaos. You left in clarity. And that kind of departure doesn't invite pity, it commands respect. This is why distance becomes your ally, because it creates contrast. When you were always present, there was no comparison. You were the baseline, the background music, the steady hum they assumed would never stop. But in your absence, every new voice they hear sounds weaker. Every new connection feels thinner. Every new person who tries to offer what you once gave feels scripted, hollow, and cheap. And that contrast forces them to admit, maybe not out loud, but in the quiet places they never show, that what they once dismissed was rare. Respect rises in distance because respect is tied to boundaries. And boundaries aren't built by saying yes, they're built by saying no. You showed up, yes. You gave, yes. But when the giving wasn't valued, you walked. Not with anger, not with pettiness, not with revenge, but with strength. And that walk, that silence, that refusal to explain what didn't need explaining, that's what echoes. Because anyone can shout, anyone can beg, anyone can try to argue their worth. But it takes a different kind of man to simply say through action, I will not stay where I am not respected. And here's the irony. The very traits they mocked or overlooked, your loyalty, your consistency, your honesty, those become the traits they respect the most when they're gone. They'll remember how you carried yourself with discipline when others folded. They'll remember how you didn't lash out even when tested. They'll remember how you loved with clarity even when they made it difficult. And all of that becomes weight in your absence. Weight they can't find anywhere else. It's like a mountain, folks. When you stand at the base every day, you stop seeing its height. You take its strength for granted. But step away, travel miles down the road, look back, and suddenly the mountain towers in a way you can't ignore. You didn't grow taller. You didn't change. You simply created space, and that space revealed your true size. That's how respect rises, not through louder noise, but through greater distance. So here's the lie broken. You don't gain respect by giving more. You gain respect by giving wisely. You don't earn respect by staying no matter what. You earn respect by leaving when enough is enough. And you don't inspire respect by proving yourself. You inspire respect by being willing to walk away, head high, peace intact. So write it in the comments right now. My distance commands respect, because when you carry yourself like a man who doesn't beg for value, you become a man whose very absence speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. Show them, show yourself, and show the world around you that your respect doesn't come from what you give away. It comes from what you refuse to compromise. And stay with me, because the next truth cuts even deeper. When respect begins to rise, something else begins to fall. The control they thought they had over you starts to slip through their fingers. And watching them wrestle with that loss, that's where the real shift begins. Number 5. They fear losing control of the narrative. Control isn't power, it's illusion, and illusions always shatter in silence. My friends, here's where the game flips. From the very beginning, they believed they were the ones in control of the story. They assumed they could decide when it started, how it flowed, and when it ended. They were convinced that their pullbacks, their silence, their games, all of it, kept them holding the pen. And why wouldn't they think that? For so long, you played the role they expected. You called when they didn't. You explained when they grew distant. You forgave when they ignored. In their mind, they weren't just part of the narrative, they owned it. But when you stopped chasing, when you walked away without asking permission, that's when the illusion cracked. That's when they realized control was never theirs to begin with. Think of it like a puppeteer holding strings. As long as you danced when they tugged, they felt powerful. They believed every pull was proof that they were above you, that your movements depended on their hands. But imagine the shock when the strings go slack. Imagine the terror when the puppet stops moving, not because it's broken, but because it chose to cut itself free. That's the silence you create when you no longer react. They can tug all they want, but there's nothing left to control. And that, folks, is where fear begins. At first, they'll pretend they don't care. They'll tell themselves they're fine, that they expected you to fold, that your absence doesn't bother them. But inside, the questions start burning. Why isn't he calling me? Why didn't he double text? Why isn't he checking if I'm okay? Why isn't he trying to fix this? Those questions aren't just about you. They're about the story they've been telling themselves for years. The story where you and men like you always run back. The story where their silence is power and your silence is weakness. Now suddenly, your silence is strength, and their story doesn't fit anymore. And let's be honest, my friends, losing control terrifies them. Because control was never about love, it was about security. Your chasing was their safety net. As long as you kept running after them, they never had to face the risk of losing you. They never had to examine their behavior or ask if they were giving enough. They could treat you as an option, confident that you'd always see them as the prize. But when you stop, when you no longer play the role of the faithful pursuer, that security vanishes. They're forced to face the one fear they never admitted. They were never in control. It's like holding sand in your hand. The tighter you squeeze, the more it slips away. That's what happens when they try to grip the narrative. For so long, they believed your desire made them untouchable. But the moment you loosened your hold, the story began to change, and they can't stop it. They can't predict it. They can't rewrite it. And unpredictability is the one thing they can't handle. Because if they don't know what you'll do next, if they can't guess whether you'll come back or move on, they're no longer the author of the story. They're just a character inside it. And here's the twist they never saw coming. Your silence doesn't just remove their control over you. It forces them to face themselves, because now they're left wondering, was I really that special? Did I misjudge his strength? Did I mistake his loyalty for weakness? Those doubts grow like vines, wrapping around every thought, every memory, every moment. They scroll through your profile, looking for clues. They replay conversations, searching for signs. They ask themselves questions they can't answer, because the man who always gave them certainty is now the man who gives them none. And that, my friends, is power. Not loud, not cruel, not desperate. Quiet power, stoic power. But let's not sugarcoat it. It won't be easy for you. The hardest part is resisting the urge to break silence, to not run back and prove them right, to not explain yourself and give them back the pen, because the truth is, part of you still wants closure, still wants clarity, still wants them to understand. But remember this, the moment you explain, you hand them the narrative again. The moment you chase, you confirm their belief that they were always in control, and that's the cycle you're here to break. So here's the lie shattered. They never controlled the narrative. You let them. You gave them the pen, you let them write the story, and you agreed to play the role they cast you in. But the second you walked, the second you refused to play the part, the whole story collapsed. And now, the pen is back in your hand. You're the one deciding what comes next. And that realization doesn't just scare them, it shakes them. Because the worst thing you can do to someone who thrives on control is show them they never had it in the first place. So here's what I want you to do. Type it in the comments right now. I hold the pen. Let it be your reminder that you are no longer letting anyone else dictate your worth, your time, or your peace. Show them, show yourself, show the world around you that control isn't theirs, it's yours. Because when you stop chasing, when you stop feeding their illusion, you don't just change the story, you rewrite it completely. And stay with me, because the next truth cuts deeper still. Once the illusion of control shatters, something darker creeps in. Doubt. And when doubt begins to take root inside them, everything they thought they knew about you, about themselves, and about the connection begins to unravel. And that unraveling, my friends, is where the real power lies. Number 6, doubt creeps in. It's not your silence that breaks them, it's the questions your silence creates. My friends, once the illusion of control shatters, something far more unsettling begins to take its place. Doubt. And doubt is not gentle. Doubt doesn't walk in quietly. It slips through the cracks of their mind like smoke, spreading until every thought is clouded. At first, they try to push it aside, to convince themselves you're still predictable, that you'll still fold, that you'll still show up like you always did. But the longer your silence stretches, the more the doubt grows, and once doubt takes root, it doesn't leave. Picture a fortress, thick walls, iron gates, guards posted at every corner. From the outside, it looks impenetrable. That fortress is their ego, their belief that you would never stop chasing. But doubt is like water. It doesn't attack the walls directly. It seeps through tiny cracks, softening the stone, eroding the foundation. At first it seems harmless, but over time the fortress begins to crumble from within. That's what your absence does. It doesn't scream, it doesn't fight, it seeps. And once it seeps, it never stops. They begin to ask themselves questions they never thought they'd ask. Was he really as weak as I assumed? Did I mistake his patience for desperation? Was he more valuable than I gave him credit for? Did I lose someone I'll never replace? Those questions don't come once and vanish. They circle back again and again, late at night, when the noise of the world fades and their mind is left unguarded. Doubt whispers, "What if you were wrong? What if he's not waiting anymore? What if he was the one?" And here's the twist. Doubt doesn't just live in their mind. It leaks into their actions. They start checking your profile, not to like or comment, but to scan, to see if you've moved on, to see if you've changed, to see if someone else now receives the attention they once took for granted. They'll ask mutual friends about you, casually, as if it's nothing. They'll replay the last conversation, analyzing every word, every look, every silence, trying to find meaning in what you didn't say. Because when you stop chasing, they lose their script. And without a script, every moment becomes a puzzle piece they can't fit together. But let's break the lie here, folks. They don't doubt because they suddenly see your worth. They doubt because your silence reveals their blindness. They doubt because they realize they never measured you correctly. They thought you were another man in the crowd, predictable, replaceable, desperate to prove himself. But now you're an exception, and exceptions create uncertainty. Uncertainty creates fear, and fear births doubt. Think of fire. When it's burning bright, no one questions its heat. People gather around it, confident it will keep them warm. But when the flames flicker, when the wood starts to die, suddenly people panic. Is it going out? Will it last? Should I add more fuel? That panic isn't about the fire's past. It's about its future. That's how doubt works. They don't just wonder who you were. They wonder who you are becoming without them. And that uncertainty haunts them more than anything you could have ever said. And here's where it cuts deep. Doubt doesn't fade with distraction. They'll try to bury it by entertaining new people, by chasing new attention, by convincing themselves they've moved on. But every new interaction feels different now. Every new person feels smaller, shallower, less grounded. Because doubt keeps whispering, what if he was better? What if he was the standard? What if you lost the one man who didn't need you but chose you? That whisper turns every smile into a comparison, every compliment into a reminder, every new face into a shadow. Now let's talk about you. This is where most men fail. When doubt creeps in on the other side, it's tempting to break your silence, to step back in, to confirm their fears, to reclaim the attention you once gave freely. But remember this, doubt is your ally. Doubt is the seed you planted the moment you chose yourself. If you return too soon, you don't just kill the doubt. You feed their old certainty. You remind them of the script. You hand them back the control you took away. So stand firm, my brothers. Understand that doubt isn't about cruelty, it's about clarity. It's not your job to answer their questions. It's your job to let them live with them. Because the questions they ask themselves will always be louder than any answer you could give. And in that silence, in that storm of uncertainty, respect begins to grow. So here's your affirmation today. Write it in the comments. I let doubt do the work. Let it be your reminder that you don't need to chase, you don't need to explain, you don't need to justify. You only need to remain grounded, steady, unmoved, because doubt is the echo of your strength. And when it creeps in, my friends, it changes everything. And stay with me, because what happens after doubt is even more powerful. When comparisons begin, when they start measuring every new person against the one they overlooked, that's when the truth cuts the deepest. And that's exactly where we're going next. Number 7. Comparisons begin. You don't realize what was rare until everything else feels ordinary. My friends, this is the stage that twists the knife the deepest, not for you, but for them. After your silence, after the loss of control, after the doubt begins to claw at their mind, something even heavier begins to grow. Comparison. And comparison is a cruel teacher. Because every new connection, every new face, every new conversation becomes a mirror that reflects back what they overlooked. And no matter how hard they try, they can't stop measuring others against you. At first, they'll pretend nothing's changed. They'll smile louder, laugh harder, surround themselves with people to prove they've moved on. They'll chase attention, thinking it will fill the void. But here's the truth. Attention is easy to get. Presence is not. And presence is what you gave. your steady consistency, your calm loyalty, your rare ability to show up without needing to be begged. That's not something they'll find again easily. So when someone new compliments them, it feels hollow. When someone flirts, it feels scripted. When someone offers attention, it feels conditional. And in those quiet moments, after the noise fades, they compare. Not because they want to, but because they can't help it. Think of it like music. When you've heard a live orchestra, the richness, the depth, the weight of every note, you can't go back to cheap background noise without feeling the emptiness. That's the difference between you and everyone else. You weren't noise. You were music. And once music leaves, every sound after feels like static. That's what your absence does. It doesn't just leave silence. It makes every replacement feel like an imitation, and here's where it hurts them the most. The very things they mocked, dismissed or overlooked are now the very things they miss. The loyalty they rolled their eyes at now feels priceless. The patience they abused now feels rare. The stability they mistook for boredom now feels like the one thing no one else can give them. They'll try to deny it. They'll tell themselves it wasn't real, that you weren't different, that they'll find better. But every new connection proves them wrong. Every comparison points them back to the man they thought they could take for granted. Folks, this is where the shift becomes permanent, because once comparison begins, it doesn't stop. They'll scroll through old conversations, reread your words, replay your presence in their mind, and whether they admit it or not, you become the standard. Not because you begged for it, not because you forced it, but because you walked away. And that silence turned you from just another man into the one who stood apart. But let's flip it back to you, because this isn't about waiting for them to realize. This isn't about being crowned the one that got away. This is about you recognizing the lesson in the pain. Their comparisons don't change your life. Their regret doesn't build your future. What matters is that you finally see what you carried all along. You weren't weak for chasing. You were strong for loving. But you're even stronger now because you learned that love without respect isn't love. And the man who understands that doesn't stay stuck in the past. He builds something greater for his future. So let's break the final lie. You weren't replaceable. You were simply unrecognized. And now, in their comparisons, in their regret, in their sleepless moments, they'll come to understand what you knew all along. That value doesn't beg, value doesn't chase, value doesn't fold. Value stands firm, even if it stands alone. And once you know that, you're free. Free from the cycle, free from the chase, free from the illusions that kept you trapped. So here's your call to action, my brothers. If you've felt this, if you've carried the weight of being overlooked, if you've walked away in silence and found yourself in strength, declare it now. Write it in the comments. I am the standard. Let the world see it. Let them feel it. Let yourself believe it. Because that's what you are. Not the exception, not the mistake, not the one who folded. The standard. The measure others can't live up to. The presence that comparisons can't erase. The man who chose dignity over desperation. And if this message spoke to you, if it hit the part of you that's been waiting to hear the truth you already knew deep down, then don't just hold it, share it. Because somewhere another man is stuck in the same cycle you just broke, and your choice to spread this could save him years of pain. Remember this, folks. Stop chasing, start choosing. Respect isn't built in pursuit. It's born in presence, and it grows in distance. And when they compare every new face to the one they lost, it won't be because you begged to be remembered. It'll be because you walked away and became unforgettable. I am the standard. Write it, believe it, live it.